So we're joined by Alun Gibbard, author and broadcaster, who is going to read Dylan Thomas's The Hunchback in the Park.
The Hunchback in the Park. The hunchback in the park, a solitary mister, propped between trees and water from the opening of the garden lock that lets the trees and water enter until the Sunday sombre bell at dark, eating bread from a newspaper, drinking water from the chained cup that the children filled with gravel in a fountain basin where I sailed my ship, slept at night in a dog kennel, but nobody chained him up. Like the park birds, he came early. Like the water, he sat down, and "Mister," they called. "Hey, mister," the truant boys from the town, running when he had heard them clearly, on, out of sound. Past lake and rockery, laughing when he shook his paper, hunchbacked in mockery, through the loud zoo of the willow groves, dodging the park keeper with his stick that picked up leaves. And the old dog sleeper, alone between nurses and swans, while the boys among willows made the tigers jump out of their eyes to roar on the rockery stones, and the groves were blue with sailors. Made all day until bell time, a woman figure without fault, straight as a young elm, straight and tall from his crooked bones, that she might stand in the night after the locks and chains, all night in the unmade park, after the railings and shrubberies, the birds, the grass, the trees, the lake, and the wild boys innocent as strawberries had followed the hunchback to his kennel in the dark.
Thank you. What would you say is the main message of Thomas's poem?
That's never an easy question when you're talking about Dylan Thomas. What is the one main message? But let's go with the title, Hunchback in the Park. Obviously, take it literally, it's about a hunchback who's in a park. But if we look further than that, take the two words. Park is somewhere that's very orderly, that's very tidy, that's been organized, that's fenced around. It's got trees and swings and places to sit and benches, and a lake, possibly a boating lake. So it's a very orderly place. But then the hunchback is somebody who is a misfit, somebody who doesn't fit into any order. And here he is in the middle of this park. So it's about difference, I think. I think we can say that the theme is difference, how this man is so different in the world of the park.
Is there a phrase or a line that stands out for you from the poem that really sort of captures that message?
There's more than one because there's lots of differences. For example, the little boys look at him. The way that the little boys in the park who play and run around the park, as boys still do, and girls, of course, the way they respond to his difference is different to the way the adult park keeper responds to his difference. The boys make fun of him, they mock him, they tease him. That's how they respond to difference. The park keeper, the adult, doesn't understand difference and just wants to deal with him and chase him out so that he has to leave the park keeper's world. Don't get near me, I don't understand you. So you see that very clearly, that the way the adults and the younger ones respond to difference is different. And how does the man himself respond? Well, he uses his imagination. So to take himself from the world that is so different to him, he imagines a woman straight and tall. Tall is emphasized more than once, and straight compared to him being crooked. So wherever he's in, whatever condition he's in, whatever world he's in, his imagination can take him out of there. And that's, of course, is what the poet, what Dylan Thomas does in his work. He uses his imagination to take you out of your usual world and to make you look at something else.
I'm thinking about that then. How do you think the poem might have been influenced by Swansea and Dylan Thomas's surroundings?
That's a little easier to answer. Well, firstly, the obvious link is that Dylan was born in Swansea and that he wrote this poem in 1932 in the house where he was born, number 5 Cwm Drive in the Uplands area of Swansea. He was 18 years old when he wrote it, but he revised it and worked on it again, and the bit that I've just read didn't come out until 9 years later. But he wrote it initially when he lived in the Uplands. Across the road to his house was an actual park, Cwm Park, and that's a park that he would have gone to during the whole 23 years that he lived in the Uplands. And he would have seen the whole of life there. He calls it a world within the world of my sea town. And it's a whole world within his bigger world. And there's other examples as well of the influence of Swansea. The first version he wrote in 1932 when he was 18, for example, he used the Swansea word mitchin for not going to school. When he published the actual poem some years later, he changed that to truant boys. So he changed that. And then there's another phrase. He says that the groves are blue with sailors. But of course, Swansea was a dock town. That line is still in. Swansea was a dock town, and you would have been familiar with seeing sailors in the streets around the town where he lived. But also the park had lots of blue bells in them, and blue bells are also referred to as sailors' trousers because of the shape of the flower. So he uses his local knowledge of the park and the sailors in the language as well. As another example.
If you were trying to recommend the poetry of Dylan Thomas to today's generation of young people, is there a particular poem or text that you would recommend that they read?
This is a particularly good poem because it does a lot of what Dylan does in most of his work, which is look back at childhood and to look at the experiences of childhood, how a child sees the world and sees difference in this case, as I've already said. So that's a good one. Fernhill is another one that does a great deal in looking at what memories and what recollections of childhood is about. If you want another type of work, then Under Milkwood, what he called his play for voices. It's 24 hours in the life of one village in West Wales, and villages in West Wales all argue as to where that village actually is. Well, the thing is, it's ours, it's in Wales. And he looks at 24 hours in the life of all these wonderfully rich characters. And that work has been called the world's first soap opera, which is kind of ironic because the main street in the village where that is set is called Coronation Street.
Alun Gibbard, thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you.